Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. You can ask those questions in Mukana. You don't know where that is. You can go to officehours.global/join. Sign up to start getting emails. And in there's links to Discord and Mukana and all kinds of other things. So you can ask there. You can vote on the questions. You can chat about the questions, all of those things. Now, if you're not in Mukana, it's fine. You can ask the questions 24/7 using askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. So go up there any time of the day, throw them in, and then we'll get them into the next show or two. Just make sure that they're well-formed and they make sense for us. So if you ask some fairly straightforward questions, we'll generally answer them in the next day or two. Let's go ahead and jump into those questions. Alex, what do we have?
First question this morning is from Douglas Carmichael. The LAMA audio people mentioned ZeroTier as a background to Cloud Link. Have you ever used Tailscale? Tailscale has some convenient features, automatic DNS management, to name a few, that ZeroTier doesn't.
Good. Jonas?
Yeah, so in general, the idea is, let's break it down to the brain concept. They use NDI audio over VPN. Generally, you probably have heard me or others say, don't use NDI over VPN. That is because that's at 100 Mbits if you do audio only. That's obviously at a way lower bit rate. We've also seen NDI HX3 and HX being done over a VPN. And then the reason why a lot of people use ZeroTier or Tailscale is that you don't need a public IP address. So what they do is to do some magic connection, where they connect two devices together directly without a server. That way you have a really low latency. I personally use Tailscale for a lot of things, even if it's the smallest thing of I have a small Mac Mini running at home. And on my iPad when I'm abroad, I can just flick a little switch that turns that Mac Mini into what they call an exit node. And the exit node allows you to tunnel all your traffic out that way. But yeah, it's a common practice if you don't want to use something like NDI Bridge, or you just want to send raw NDI over. Like I said, don't do the full bandwidth, high bandwidth mode, but HX, HX3, HX2, or audio only is probably fine. But that's one of those things where you once again want to talk about the rainy days where you have network congestion, where you have packet loss. Think about those, and then you might still want to use a more robust solution.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway asks, are you aware of an application that can programmatically analyze video files and trim out dead spaces at the beginning and end of the video files, like countdown clocks or intros, etc.?
Jonas?
There are a couple applications that can do that. But if you want to do a little more tacky and look at it, I built a software called FileB, CheckB, TestB. Now I forgot how my own product is called. It analyzes your video and audio based on black frames, freeze frames, and silent. And those are just FFmpeg filters that anybody can use with FFmpeg. And then you get a whole list of occurrences of that. And then you can use that to cut it. I personally would say that's a great little project you could work on. ChatGPT or my new favorite Claude 3.5 is really going to help you just do it for you together with it. There are some solutions, and especially if you're talking about podcasts, there's a lot of automation done right now on the Premiere Pro, and for podcasting, there's a tool that cuts it all for you.
Good, Courtney.
Yeah, it's a tough ask to have it done automatically, because you don't know if there is audio that's on the head of a file. Like a lot of takes for dramatic, have the actor will be just talking and they'll be doing a slate and they'll be calling the scene on the take number, and they'll have a slate in there and they'll pull that out, and you won't. You'd want to trim it at the point the director says action. So maybe you could listen for the word action. But it's kind of tough to do because everybody's style is different. And making something to automate it, if you make it just cut off dead air at the beginning, there could be a scene that starts in silence with nothing happening, with no dialogue. And so you don't want it to trim an important part of that head off. And trimming the top and tails just based on black frames. If you start in black and come out from behind somebody's back or something, cut that off. So you would have a lot of false positives. I do have an app, as I've talked about many times, SmartTube Next is a YouTube app that I have for doing all my playback, and it cuts out commercials. But it takes the tack that it automatically, when somebody plays back something, and it can, it'll automatically remove or it will skip over intros and repeat it, things that are repeated all the time, or a self-promotion that someone does a live read of. That will be skipped over automatically, and it's handled because they farm that out to the users. The first user that gets annoyed with that marks the head and the tail of that red commercial, and that goes into the cloud. And whenever you play that YouTube video over SmartTube Next, it can automatically skip that if you set a button. So it's crowdsourced top and tailing. So that's one way to do it intelligently.
Yeah, I would generally try to find somebody to do something like this, especially if those matter. If you're just clipping something really quickly and it doesn't matter, and you're just trying to throw it up but there's very few things that don't matter when you're posting these things. You're taking your live or whatever and you're turning it into a VOD, and we really want to always keep thinking about the kind of the craft of what we do, and the fact that everything feels like something to the user. And when it feels a little janky, if it doesn't get that just right, and a lot of these AI tools aren't good enough to do it just yet, then that little roughness affects how the viewer feels about your product, about your brand. So it's one of those things that unless I knew that the AI would do it better, I'd still hire somebody to do it. And Jonas, I had a question for you. So what makes Claude 3.5 so much better than ChatGPT, or any better than ChatGPT? Like, what are the things that they're adding there?
So Claude 3.5 is a lot faster in writing code. And one of the really nice features that they have is they have something called artifacts that basically, in ChatGPT, those code blocks that sometimes work, sometimes don't. They have a second screen that has all of those, and it's easy to see different versions. And then especially if you work on web stuff, like I often do, is they have internally a React and Tailwind library integrated into that. So it can just write you whole React component by you describing it. I've done a couple websites now with it, and it's really great for that because you can give it feedback and it's great at iterating. And then the other thing that I'm working on right now is they have the concept of projects where you can upload a lot of data to it. I downloaded a documentation and uploaded all the documentation to it. And then I was, based on that documentation, write me an app that can do X, Y, Z. And it put a pretty coherent app out. It seems to be a lot better for that right now.
Interesting. Yeah. We're going to be talking on Monday. We'll start our discussions about AI, and Claude is one of the things that's on our list for the next 8 weeks. So stay tuned. Next question.
Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California asks, saw an alert on my feed yesterday. What's the best way to fix things when you get zoom bombed by a user for a short time? And that's from the QR code.
Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I'd say first thing is to hit that little shield button down at the bottom where you see the host tools, and you just go ahead and just suspend everything. So you suspend all participant activities, and I'm not going to click report to Zoom right now because I'm the only person in the meeting. But then you suspend it, and that'll lock out any video, any audio, and then you could slowly either kick people out, remove other participants, put them in the waiting room, report them, and then there are some other tools if you have a business account where you can go in and you can block people from ever coming back ever again. So those are a few of the things that you can do.
And it's one of the reasons that I often use the waiting room, because if you kick somebody out and they come right back in because they have the link, embedding their direct access to your meeting, in my opinion, is not something I want to do in an event. Because what happens is if someone's Zoom bombing and I kick them out immediately, if there's a waiting room already built, you can't do it later. So if there's a waiting room already built into the system, they're going to get to the waiting room and then they're done. So I think that that's the best proactive way to make sure that you don't have extended Zoom bombing, because they're going to, if they do something, they can only do it once. Next question.
Chuck Hodges in Tuolumne, California asks, saw an alert on my feed yesterday. What's the best way to fix things when you get zoom bombed by a user for a short time? And that's from the QR code.
Next question.
Daniel T. in San Diego asks, good morning, everyone. Has anyone used Apple Time Machine, and can it be used with a network-attached storage? And that's from the QR code.
Nigel.
Yes, I have a Synology 1522 Plus, and it backs up all the machines in our house. So if you go into the software that comes with your Synology, you create a shared folder. You follow the instructions on creating a shared folder. I happen to name them Time Machines as I need them to. Then go into Time Machine on Apple, find that network connection, and connect it. It works very well. I would follow the advice in the thing I'm about to share on the chat in terms of making sure SMB is turned on, making sure you do the right thing about recycling beans and encryption, but it works fabulously every day, invisibly, almost in the background.
Good, Bill.
I just want to emphasize what he was saying. The thing I like most about having Time Machine on my machines constantly, well, there's two parts of it. Number one, the little subtle notes that just come up on my screen occasionally said it's been 60 days since you've done a backup. I like the fact that it's non-intrusive and it constantly gives me, I can ignore them if I want, but it does kind of tickle me to, I should take that backup Time Machine drive and plug it in and let it run overnight and back up, image my main computer. And those main computer images are the main process I use when I need to upgrade my machines, because Apple has built in a really robust re-image a new machine from the old Time Machine backup. So it's the first place I go. If everything's working right in my current system and I've got a Time Machine backup, I know that if I buy a new computer, all I have to do is attach it to that, start it running, and eventually my machine will be imaged just like my last machine. It's really convenient.
Jason.
Like, two great answers. I don't think of Time Machine as a backup. I think of it as an advanced undo. And yes, Synology will absolutely work with it. And just, if you absolutely need to be able to get back in quickly, just think about doing a dedicated, separate, complete image backup.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania asks, I use Unity Intercom on Mac Mini behind a college firewall. Sometimes we need to log in from outside with a computer or phone. Is this a job for Cloudflare? I own a domain and a Cloudflare account, but can't figure out the config on the Mac Mini.
Jonas?
So the general problem that you have is that Unity requires TCP and UDP on port 20101. And the reason why that's a problem is Cloudflare tunnels to domain, which is probably what you were thinking about, really only works with TCP, not with UDP. If you want to do UDP, what I would do is rent a tiny VM somewhere in the cloud for $5. You probably will also get a static IP address with that. You can then set up something like Tailscale or similar. Or what you could do is you can use Cloudflare tunnels networks, which they do support UDP. So what I would try is to get that UDP and TCP to an outside host and then do it from there. And then you can also point a CNAME or an A record to that specific server, and that will work. That's how we do our Unity. But right now you can't just do Cloudflare tunnel with UDP, sadly. So that's where you need a little more configuration, and Unity does require both of them.
Next question.
Next one's for me. Is there a way to stream RTMP-S on an ATEM? Why isn't it secured by default? Any additional overhead with the encryption?
I don't know if there's overhead. Go ahead, Jonas.
So there would be overhead in running the SSL library. I did think that the ATEM was able to do RTMP-S if you used a custom one. That being said, if you really care about your stream, I wouldn't stream with an ATEM anyhow. The problem that we see with the ATEM is that it has a problem with its TCP networking stack that is on the chip. What I would do is, if you have a low budget and you want to stream RTMP-S, is take any old computer, or if you don't have one, buy a Raspberry Pi, and then put an RTMP restreamer. DataRi restreamer, for example, is a great one, or anything like that on it. Since you just need to change protocol, you wouldn't even need to have enough power to transcode, because all you would do is you stream RTMP to it, and then it can stream RTMPS to other clients. One of the great things with that workflow is that you also have a program output from the ATEM to really see what it is sending. And then you can decide when you want to forward it. You can also record it and something like that. But RTMPS, it's the SSL certificates or TLS libraries that you need. And that does add some requirements when you need to update them, when they're still secure and all that. That's why there is some overhead being added there. Most CDNs do still offer an RTMP ingest. I know Vimeo does, YouTube does. But generally, yeah, if you can, use the RTMPS version. And
I would concur with Jonas that it's nice to have the option to stream from the switcher just because it's there as an emergency or a fallback, but I wouldn't use it regularly on purpose. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway asks, do you have an idea how to set up commands that can be controlled from Companion to manually switch between two WANs at the press of a button without needing to log into a router interface?
Jonas?
I do. So once again, I end up talking about a peplink router, but I just pulled up the documentation for the peplink API. There's a command you can run that is the WAN connection priority. You would need to either use a middle thing that handles the authentication, but you might also be able to just do it within Companion with the generic HTTP module. And then in theory, you can have your Companion switch that. The peplinks also have, if you have a SIM card in them, you can also text something to that number. Then that changes it. So there's a couple options there. A lot of the higher end routers do have some form of automatability. So you'll find that in there.
Next question.
Andre Dole in Berlin asks, can I use a dumb non-PoE network switch to get rid of PoE, which is delivered by the main network switch at a venue?
Nigel?
I think it probably depends on the device that you're using that needs the PoE. You can buy an injector. They cost about $20. Get the right one for the right wattage rating of the device, which will inject the PoE from a dumb switch into your device. But it really depends on the device and why you need PoE. But for a long time, I had one PoE device, and I just used an injector to provide the power to that device.
And if you're trying to get rid of the PoE, if you plug your non-PoE switch into a PoE network, from then everything coming out of it should be non-PoE. Like it's just gonna, PoE is designed to just ignore it if it doesn't need it. So that should be okay as well. Next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina asks, almost ready to pull the trigger on a new MacBook Pro. Should I try to wait a few months? And does the Pro Max justify the added expense? What should I know?
Nigel?
I don't think any of us know. I mean, I pulled the trigger about a month ago. I was really struggling with some of my travel without a MacBook. So I jumped. I did the analysis that I wanted a 14-inch, not a 16-inch, which rather ended the Max conversation. I then said, well, I want at least about a terabyte, I want as much memory. And in the end, on a 14-inch MacBook Pro, you end up with one choice unless you want it pre-configured for you. And that was the one I picked. Now, we were having this conversation, at WWDC time about were they going to announce some hardware, and they clearly didn't. And then everybody said, well, that's it. You won't see one until near the end of the year. And everyone said, oh, hold on, you might. Who knows? I mean, I know I don't know. But I took the decision to jump. I got the 12-core, 18-core GPU, 18 gigabyte, 1 terabyte device, and it's fabulous.
Jesse?
Regarding the top-end model, what we do is we calculate how many hours we'll be using that device and then figure out how much we're paying per hour. And it usually comes down to pennies, even if we're buying the highest-end model. And we use these computers for years. And if your situation is similar, just go for the high end. It ends up being like 25 cents a day or something like that.
Good, Bill.
I look at it in terms of use cases. Now, I do video mostly, which is a pretty heavy load. It's not as heavy a load as some sort of scientific calculation and high-end 3D modeling and things that really push processors and GPUs to their absolute max. So I tend to stay in the pro level, not the max level. And for the kind of daily interaction stuff I do, whether or not a render takes 6 minutes or 5 minutes isn't a deal breaker for me. Now, if I was in a really high turnover situation and I had to get work out as fast as a human possibly, that little difference might make a difference to me, so I would go at the top end. But for me, the pro tier as opposed to the max tier has been where I have lived, and boy, it's been incredibly robust and I haven't had a problem with it at all. So that's my use case. Everybody's different.
Yeah, I think that I would highly recommend the Max if you're going to do any kind of heavy lifting. The difference in render time for ProRes and for ProRes specifically, and I believe the Pro doesn't have the same dedicated ProRes encodes. So I don't think that there's a ProRes chip in the Max that speeds things up a lot. Like it's I have the Max chip in my M1 Studio, and I keep on thinking there's something wrong because it's rendering so quickly. So but it's all there when I get there. So I think that if you're planning to do any kind of heavy rendering, I would definitely go with the Max. If you are, and I would, again, I try not. My computers sit on my desk, so I use them for years, and so as a result, I tend to max them out. I didn't get the Ultra for the Studio because I thought I was going to buy a Pro, and I didn't. The Pro took too long, and I'm waiting for the next one. So, but I would tend to max my computers out because I'm going to probably use them for 5, 6, 7 years. Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas asks, Jonas, can you share what's next for SpaceCommz, perhaps StreamDeck integration?
Jonas?
Yeah, so we actually already have a companion integration. If you on a beta test that, send me a Discord DM and I can send that to you and you can install it in your companion setup. Office Hours is using that on the Sunday show already, and we have had good feedback. A StreamDeck native integration is also in the plan. And then we'll see what comes next. We're trying to shoot for release at IBC this year.
That's great. Next question.
John Foltz in Sailings Grove, Pennsylvania asks another Cloudflare question. Can someone describe how to use and set it up for dummies?
Jonas?
Yes, so there are basically two ways that you can set it up. There's the managed way that requires you to have a Cloudflare account and a domain with it, so you can patch it there. And then there's a way that everybody who's watching this right now can try it. So if you open up a command line after you install Cloudflare, I'll explain in a second where that's coming from. You can do Cloudflare URL, and then you want to say what you want to forward. In my case, that is companion at that port. So now what it's going to do is this is called a quick tunnel. It's try Cloudflare. So now if I go here, we will see this is my local companion that I already can control. It's all my different buttons. That works. So that is 30 seconds. Now you basically have a way to securely get to it. You can't lock this down because it's not controlled. As soon as you hit Command C and you end it, Houston, we have a problem. You can't access it anymore. If you want something for your production and you're apart from just testing, you log into Cloudflare and then you go into Zero Access. Then you click on Create a New Tunnel. Here you select Cloudflare. Next, let's call this OH demo. We're going to save this tunnel. And now you want to install this connector. I already installed this. There's install instructions for everything. It works on literally any platform that I've ever come up on. And then here is a command. You copy this, and what's important on Windows is that you do it in the command line with admin privileges. You copy that, and then you put it here, and then you run it. And this now connected it. So in a second, we'll see my computer come up here as connection. And now this is where I can define what should be forwarded. Often we want to forward multiple things. So let's say this is OH demo companion I want to put that on my ByteHive Cloud domain. You can also define a path. That's kind of how you can route the DNS to it. On this interface, it makes it a little easier for you. You can say HTTP 127.0.0.1.8000, and now we save this. Gonna take a second, and then I will show you that in a second. Here's the OH demo. And here's it. Once again, my companion working. Then you can go the next step and actually secure that, create an application. That's what we do here at office hours. And you can have an email list or all that, but that then really goes deep into what you can do with it. If you want to do things that are not HTTP, like TCP, you want to have an SSH access, or what we are doing right now is access to a vMix system, access to a remote OBS system. You can also forward TCP. Then you need to change it to TCP, put that URL in. And then if you want to pull that down, you can just type Cloudflare access, TCP, the domain that you're connecting and what it should come out of locally. And then from your system, it just looks like whatever that remote program is that you're trying to access suddenly is local.
Next question.
Next one's for me. Has anyone heard from YouTube if SRT streaming will be open to the public soon?
I haven't heard soon. Someday. All I've heard is someday that SRT will be available. So yeah, still out there, still being tested. But YouTube's always testing stuff, and you never know quite what their schedule looks like. So we'll keep, when it comes out, we'll talk more about it in more detail. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Elias Perunin, apologies if I didn't get that right. London, Canada. The Netgear AV Line M4250 series seems to be the gold standard for AV over IP today. Are there any switches out there that the panel has found to work well with NDI, 2110, etc.?
I think you can, there's a lot of switches that can work. It's how much work do you have to put into to them to get them to work? You know, so it's not that you can't use, you could be using Dream Machines, you could be using Meraki, Cisco. There's a lot of other ones. It's how much work is already built into the box to make this relatively easy and turnkey. And I don't know of anything that is easier to set up from all the things that everybody's done here than the 4250 line. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, Jonas, you mentioned doing larger projects like whole websites with Claude. I use Claude a lot and pay for the Pro plan, but have hit the usage limits frequently. How do you do large projects efficiently without hitting the usage limits?
Go, Jonas.
I personally haven't hit it. Also, that being said, I try to not be like, hey, next line, next line, next line, but have it generate a general outline. What I do for that is you want to first give it an identity, something like you are a website designer. You should do X, Y, Z. This is what I like. Please ask me questions if you need something. That's a really important sentence. If you put that in there, what we found with ChatGPT, but also with Claude is instead of hallucinating as quickly, it will be like, actually, I don't know what you want there. Can you tell me? And then ask you. So that's a technique that you can use where you have the AI first interview you to get all the data that it thinks it needs, and then you can generate it. That being said, I have it generate the main thing, and then just say, hey, this is the general vibe. This is what I want. Here's some small changes that I want, and then I take that into my code editor. I've gone well with that, and then admittedly, as soon as in my code editor, there's another AI coming in, GitHub Copilot, who then also helps me. And then I also still happen to do this for a long time. So if it's all out, I can still get it there. And often I try to get the structure and the annoying thing of how do you structure the project and then fill in the code myself. But I haven't hit those limits yet.
It's kind of amazing that a couple of years ago we were all coding, we were all doing whatever we were doing, and now working with some version of AI has become pretty much day to day. I mean, I have AI generating. I use it for research. I use it mostly for imagery, but it's kind of an amazing thing how quickly we shifted gears to using all of this on an everyday basis. Quick reminder, of course, that you can ask questions all through this show, but also all day, 24/7. You can ask them at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Simply make sure that you have a clear question about something that's relatively technical, and we will throw those in. Make sure it's one question per post, and we'll throw those in usually sometimes on the same day, but oftentimes in the next day or two. Let's go to the next question.
Grant Whitehead in Adelaide, Australia asks, I get my Apple Vision Pro in store at 8 a.m. on the first day they're available, next Friday. Is there anything I can do to prepare technologically and or emotionally?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, first thing you do when you get it, Grant, is you open up a browser window and you position it carefully over to the right. You make it fairly large. And then you go into your bank's website, open up your account, and imagine what you can do with that 6,000 Australian dollars you just spent on your Vision.
So a couple things is that you will. The funny thing about it is you will lose track of time. That's typically the thing that I find in the Apple Vision Pro that happens to me often is you throw it on and you start fiddling with things. Next thing you know, it's like 4 hours later. So just know that don't do it right. I don't tend to put it on right before I need to do something because it doesn't actively show you a clock, which I think is probably on purpose. You can put a clock up, you can get a little clock app and put it up, but it's not like built into it. And I think that's part of what has it time just kind of disappears when you're in there doing your thing. Hopefully you have bought Apple videos before. There's a couple things that have paid off for me that I didn't know that I was doing when I got the Apple Vision Pro. One is that I tend to buy all my movies on the Apple TV product. And so I have over 600 movies. And so it's really nice on the Apple Vision Pro because they're 4K, they just open up and I have all these movies that were ready to go. But that might be something you have to look at. The movies are pretty impressive. There's a handful of, Moog makes a couple, we've had them on talking about it, but they make some pretty fun music apps. Jigspace is mind blowing. Like it really is like the future of how to do training. I think their business model is a little too expensive, but the methodology they're using is really, really interesting. So download that, but download, a bunch of apps to start to play with it. Just know that it's going to take some time. There's a dinosaur demo. You want to do it. I mean, it's not like it becomes kind of the demo that you give people, but the dinosaur demo, and then there's a bunch of immersive videos in you'll see there that you want to go ahead and use. So those are the things that make sure that you've got a little space to work. You don't have to. You can sit and just do everything. But if you're doing something like Jigspace, you might want to walk around a little bit. So anyway, those are some of the things to think about and share your experience with it. But it's a pretty amazing device, and we expect to get more of it. Make sure to download or sign up at thestreamvoodoo.com/spatial. We're going to be streaming stuff to it very soon, and you'll want to see it in your headset. Next question.
Vic Hernandez in Springfield, Missouri asks, the YouTube video is streaming ahead of the Mukana video. Has the workflow changed?
Jonas?
No. And also, I think what you're meaning is that when you watch it on YouTube, that it's somehow slower or faster than in Mukana, but it's actually the same video. We haven't done any HLS or WebRTC magic to get the latency down there. The total glass-to-glass latency is probably a little lower because we go directly to YouTube now, but nothing changed there, and you shouldn't see a difference. What you might see is, depending on where you were when you loaded it, YouTube might have different buffers set up on those websites. So, for example, if you're on the youtube.com, while you had some packet loss issues, it might be like, oh, actually, let's just add a couple more seconds there so you have a smoother playback experience, but nothing from our end.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it's the same video. If you look on YouTube, when they're embedded, it's actually down under the share. It's embedded here with this code, and you can see that this one's called 1YQF, and that's the same exact video that's inside of here, that's inside of here, that's inside of here. So they should all play the exact same time because it's the exact same video. It just depends on when you press play and if you hit live again and refresh and try to get them synced up. But it's only going to be a little bit off, not very much at all, because it is the same video.
Yeah, and typically this is delivering segments, and so usually I'd be curious at how far off it is. My guess is that it's less than 2 seconds, because it's usually where it grabs the next segment, that's coming in. I believe that YouTube is using 2-second GOPs, and I thought it was 2-second segments, but it could be up to 6-second segments, which is 3 GOPs there. And so what that would mean is whenever it grabs the next one, it now is in that cadence. So sometimes you can end up being as much as 6 seconds or 8 seconds away from each other just because of where it grabbed onto the next segment as it rolled in. Next question.
Greg McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts asks, on my Blackmagic Design 4K, I can zoom in with the back panel, but I'd like to see the zoom from the monitor out, which is 1080. Any ideas?
Bill?
Yeah, I think what you're thinking of is that's a zoom controlling the lens or some sort of scaling for the chip. And it's not really, I don't think, unless I'm wrong about this, I think you're just increasing the display when you pinch out zoom on the display. So that's not going to affect your signal going through the camera. If you want to do that, you need a lens kit of some kind, wouldn't you?
We actually had this problem with the 12Ks a couple weeks ago where if I double tap to zoom up, it was actually affecting the main SDI. That is not a behavior that I'm interested in.
That's like,
so it was, and I was like, I gotta update these cameras. I must have been some firmware so when we double tapped, or if I changed anything in my monitor while I was looking at things, it was changing the main SDI output view, which was set to clean feed. My problem has been exactly the opposite, because in general, what you want to do is if you have an external monitor, that monitor may have a zoom in, that monitor may have a bunch of different things that you may want to double tap, but you usually don't want what you do on the LCD to affect the output. So but mine does. Maybe I'll figure out what the firmware is on mine, and maybe that'll be good for you.
Could be a little app, Alex.
Yeah, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, I think that he means when you double tap and you then zoom in. In generally, clean feed normally should fix that, but there's also different director
I think he
modes.
actually wants it. I think he wants to have it output. Yeah.
So if you disable the clean feed, and then also there's a director mode.
Yeah.
I can't recall what it is directly.
There's director and cinematographer.
You definitely can do it, and that's a pretty common thing where your camera might be somewhere where you can't look at it, or you want to have a better look at it.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out how to turn it off. I switched through all those settings trying to figure out why. How do I not have it be this way?
Your monitor might also do it. If you have a video assist, you can also pinch in, and yes, you lose some resolution because you output 1080 and you can't zoom in on the 4K, but for viewing, it's probably fine.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, and I'd be careful. If you are natively sending out a 1080 signal and you zoom in too much, you're going to see pixel not distortion, but those pixels are going to get really big, and it's going to be an ugly picture. So be careful if you're in that mode not to zoom too much, or
but I think
start degrading your signal.
If he is able to zoom out from the camera at 1080, it most likely that zoom up would still be inside the 4K frame. I think the problem he's having is that because if you're only getting a 1080p signal out of it, you don't want to zoom in really because you grab onto. But I think that he's trying to do it inside the camera, and it was doing it for us automatically, and it was not what I wanted. So we'll do some more research.
Maybe you two can switch cameras or something.
Exactly, Craig. Let me know what kind of camera you have. I got a 12K over here that just keeps on zooming in. All right, next question.
Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon asks, Cloudflare versus Tailscale. Why would you choose one over the other?
Jonas?
So Cloudflare has more of a point-to-point single port. Tailscale I use when I want multiple ports. Cloudflare is great for single or maybe 2 ports, but that's kind of when the simplicity reaches its end. Cloudflare also allows you to expose those ports then to the public internet and put it behind Cloudflare Access, which is their access management tool. So what we do is if we have internal websites, they're hosted internally, are not reachable over the public internet. Cloudflare tunnel on it, and then you can make them reachable over the public internet, like we will see with a demo later. And the great advantage there is that you don't need a client. With Tailscale, you will always need a client. It's much more of a traditional VPN than Cloudflare. Cloudflare is based, it's called zero trust infrastructure. So like it's based on the principle that you don't trust the network that you're on. Tailscale requires a little more trust. But yeah, I would use Tailscale if you need like MDNS, if you want to have like easy access to the network. I've done some remote mixing with it. I know of one person who is putting the small GLI NAT routers into all of their racks. And the cool thing that they then can do is they have Tailscale on that and on the iPads that control everything. And I don't know if that's a problem that you found, but often when you come into the venue and you plug in and you don't have your own Wi-Fi, or you walk out of your own Wi-Fi range, you connect to the conference Wi-Fi, you lose connection to your kit. Tailscale would allow you to still be connected. One thing to note with Tailscale is that it shows up as an Ethernet adapter, and sometimes some of the programs are still a little iffy with that because they don't see it as the main Ethernet adapter. And then I found, for example, Mixing Station in the past had some issues where it's like, are you sure you want to connect to that? Like, your subnet mask isn't set up for that. Like, that won't work. But in generally, that's how I would go. Multi-port, Tailscale, and if you need more VPN and general network access, Cloudflare if you want to expose ports to the public, or you don't want to use a heavy solution like a VPN and you only need a couple ports of access.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asks, I've moved into my new space and now have an ATEM mini port free. I would like to ask Jonas if I should add my Raspberry Pi to it. Where do I go to get an update of your software? Thanks.
Jonas?
I think it's always a great solution to add a Raspberry Pi to it. That being said, if you want the latest update, you can head over to Gumroad. Right now, we're working on an update with the release of the ATEM software 9.5. The minimum required version of the Hyperdeck protocol got updated. So right now, the ATEM will tell you, hey, please update your Hyperdeck software. We fixed that, and we're working on going through all the release cycles today and over the weekend, hopefully, to get all new versions out. Luckily, we already implemented it, and we just said we use an older version than we used. So that should be out soon. But yeah, Gumroad, you can get the latest version there. If you log in, if you have problems, then just write me and I can send it over to you that way. That being said, the Raspberry Pi is going to get an update very soon, and everything else as well.
Next question.
Roz Humphreys in Comox, British Columbia, Canada. I hope to locate my NAS about 60 feet away. I have Ethernet already run down to the data room. If I have the correct speed of ports on my M1 Max setup, can I edit video on a NAS?
Nigel?
I think it's one of those depends questions. Do I? Yes. Do I have production need to do lots of 4K in real time? No. So as long as you set the system that makes sense to the production needs, you use proxies where you need them, I find it works fine. But there'll be lots of people who are doing real-time stuff who don't want proxies doing 4K with multiple streams, where they would really need something directly attached.
I have stuff where I can't do it outside of the internal hard drive on my Mac Mini, on my Mac Studio. Like I need more than 2 gigs a second. This is, I think it was 6K raw feeds, that I'm doing a multicam with. And so as I cut through that, I got into a situation in Resolve where it obviously wouldn't play back well. And if I built proxies for it, the proxies fell out of sync. So, and I have to test it on the newest version. So I had to, so the only way to really get it working was to put it all on there. And that's actually one of the challenges. Again, why I wish if I bought the Studio again, I would have bought it with 8 terabytes instead of 1 terabyte. Mostly so that I could do that kind of thing right on it. There are a handful. Iodine makes a drive, and there's a handful of other ones that can get up to the 5 gigs a second. But otherwise, most of the editing I do is on the OWC NVMe RAIDs, which get me to about 2,200, I think, 2,200 gig megs per second. And those have been pretty good as far as managing that. But I would use a NAS as a way that I stored. The only way I would use a NAS is if I was connected with fiber. And I don't think that I would probably use a NAS on anything over 1080p. Yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I mean, can you? Yes. Should you? Well, I don't know. Give it a shot. But just based on pure real world internal speed, it's about a quarter as fast. I'm comparing the internal speeds of the SSDs on an M1 Mac Mini to ideal 10 gigabit single connectivity over a network.
And as a NAS to connect to a bunch of computers and have them have a single point of reference to grab onto
in a vacuum, yeah,
and so on and so forth, it works great. It's just that if you're putting a bunch of files on there and you want to edit off of it, I would still consider online something that's direct attached. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, it depends on the format of the video and the model of the Synology or QNAP. It depends on the NAS itself, because some of them are purpose built for this exact same kind of thing. I'll put a link in the chat to a local venue here, Run Studios, that has quite the Synology set up, and it shows all their editor workstations. And again, it just depends. Are you doing 4K? Are you doing something super small H.264 files that are just going to social or something like that? You could probably get away with a pretty small system. But once you start stepping into ProRes, especially when you get into the 4K and 8K stuff, then yeah, it comes down to using the Blackmagic speed disk test and running a test through that. And I would recommend 10 gig NIC if it's not built into like a Mac Studio or something like that.
And Mickey is correct in the chat. The majority of professional post houses cut on NASs and SANs. It's just my point of view is a home setup versus one with IT and fiber, and someone who's managing an organization that's managing the speeds and the usage and everything else is a different thing. But he's absolutely right that most folks use NASs for that and SANs. The main thing is that they have a much different infrastructure than most of us have at home. When they moved Industrial Light and Magic to the Presidio from San Rafael, there are people that are working, and all your computers were not in front of you anyway. You'd have a desk, and people would be like, "We're ready to move you to your new desk," and the person would say, But I have to finish the shot, and what's going to happen? I got to set this all up again, and then the IT division would have to explain to them that they had been working from their computer in the Presidio for the last 6 weeks. You're not, we were making sure that it all worked. All you got to do is go over there and turn your monitor on, and it'll be exactly the way you left it. Next question.
Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada asks, is there any way in Windows to quickly change network profiles the way locations can from the menu bar on the Mac?
Jason?
Not from the menu bar, but if you're not afraid of PowerShell, then sure, pretty easy. I mean, there's you get it set the way that you want it, and then you put this nice little command line in, and then to import that and make use of it, you just use import CLI XML and then the path, and you're good to go.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, Jonas, I've used Caddy on a VPS to connect my self-hosted Nextcloud server to the internet with Caddy adding SSL and TLS. Would you feel comfortable using Caddy in place of Cloudflare?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I'll be honest, probably not, just because I manage so many services now that I really don't have the time to be worried about another proxy and SSL certs expiring and all that. And that's one of the great things that Cloudflare does for me. What I use right now is we use a lot of Cloudflare tunnels. And then Coolify IO is a kind of new thing that we're using right now to build our services out. You will probably like it. It's a really cool way to host your own little self-hosted apps in your own cloud interface. You pay $5 a month if you want to host it on their server and use your own servers. But the cool thing is it just SSHs into all the servers. So for example, the tele interface for office hours is running in my US data center or in my US server that is also controlled from it, but it has all those nice to have features where, like, if you push something to GitHub, it automatically updates it, does a zero downtime deploy, manages all the SSL certs, gets you an Let's Encrypt cert and all that. So Caddy might be a fine choice. It probably is. I looked at it. I don't have much experience with it, but the less I have to deal with SSL certs, which I already have to deal on way too many projects, the happier I am.
Next question.
From the QR code, Anawahai Black Bear Marshall in Oahe asks, what are some of the best ways to add HTTPS to an audio stream? Our users are having HTTPS errors from the direct IceCast link for some of our seminars, not having HTTPS in the URL.
Jonas?
Funny that you would ask. So we actually had the same issue here at Office Hours a while ago when we started running our radio feed. And what we are doing is, I think it's one of the first deployments of Cloudflare tunnels that we did within Office Hours. We're running a tiny Cloudflare tunnel on there, and we tunnel it out. And then
when you say tiny, what's tiny versus large?
I've never felt the impact or seen it in the top 10 of my task list. That's what I mean.
Right. It's just like, so you just got Cloudflare in there in that, and it's not a separate instance, it's on that computer,
yep.
Right?
So we put it on that computer, and then we just set up that, and it forwards all the traffic to the main that I host. And the cool thing with Cloudflare is they can put an HTTP proxy in front of it. So that's why we did it this way. We gain a whole lot of things by doing it this way. We get HTTPS, we get automatic cert renewals from Cloudflare. We don't need to worry about HTTPS on our end, which, as you might expect, we moved it around a little, and we have been moving stuff and networks change and SSL change. So you really wouldn't want to deal with that. But then also you get all the additional advantages of Cloudflare, where like if somebody tries to DDoS you, you could say, no, let's put you in breakout. We've had great experience with that.
That's great. Next question.
Next question is from Liberty White in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm traveling to Jamaica tomorrow. They were hit by Hurricane Beryl. We're documenting students who will be learning STEM. What do we need to bring to ensure success under these conditions? Thinking iPhones, battery packs, etc.
Good, Bill.
So my first thought would be, yes, you're right about battery packs and power. I would probably, this is one of those circumstances where I would think about one of those folding solar panels that can at least charge small batteries to a level. You don't know whether or not the phone network is going to be reliable. You also don't know whether the power network, wherever you're going to specifically be, is reliable. So I would look to those basic fundamental things and see if you can kind of imagine a little off-grid experience, and what are the most key things that you can take that you don't want to be without. That and a whole bunch of bars of some kind of something to snack on just in case it gets disrupted and you're in an area where it's a little harder to find things to eat. But those are the things I would think about in a disaster area.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Bill. The battery pack and a solar charger of some sort. But one other thing you might think about getting is a portable Starlink, because Starlink, as of May of this year, became available in Jamaica. And you can see from the availability, except for this strange hexagonal shape near Kingston over here, which is waitlisted, all the rest of it is available for Starlink. So you can have an internet connection right there in Jamaica if you wish. So you might look into getting one of those. Especially if interconnectivity of the internet is limited in the areas, rural areas, if you're going to.
Jason?
When a place has just been hit by a natural disaster, I basically assume that every cellular thing, every iPhone, every iPad is not going to work. And I would go old school. I would start with just a digital recorder with a normal, offline camera, and then work up from there.
And generally, water tablets are useful. Just to make sure that you have them around. So just water purification. One thing to know, we learned this in Africa, that if you take water and you pour it through a, some kind of filter, I mean, it can be, anything that you can buy these little filters for it. You pour it through the filter to get any kind of particulate out of it, and you put it in a clear 2-liter bottle like you would get with soda, and you leave that out for 2 hours, it'll kill everything in it. Like it's in the middle of the day between 10 and 2. Just the ultraviolet rays from the sun will kill everything in the water. And so if you need to do that, that's just something there. I don't think you're going to do any of those things. I don't think Jamaica got hit that hard into the. If you're still flying into Jamaica, things are probably working better than expected. But those are the kind of things in emergency that we would also think about as well. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I would also think visit your local camping store and just take a look, wander around, and maybe you'll get an idea for something that those are people who go out and try to be self-sustaining. And sometimes I've gotten good ideas on a little something that I could buy at a camping store that'll be helpful.
And every production that I go to, I take 3 bars per day. So I have these little jam bars. I think I talked about these in the past. They don't sponsor the show at all. I still pay for these in retail, but this is what I have, and I have 3 of these per day in my bag. And so I can actually go 2 or 3 days with them. So I'm a little hungry and I lose a little weight, but probably not a bad thing for me. Anyway, but I use those and they seem to keep me going. Next question.
Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas asks, what are your thoughts on Speedify and when would you use it?
Jonas?
I think it's a pretty interesting solution. They basically offer you some of the tunability that you would see in higher-end products like Peplink SpeedFusion. I used it in the past really successfully. It's basically a VPN, and then they do some special things. They allow you to do bonding with multiple interfaces. I've had okay responses with it, but what was really cool is they basically do something similar than SpeedFusion does, where you can say, hey, actually, this is a WebRTC feed, this is a Zoom feed, packet order, and stuff like that really matters. They send more throughput through, so you'll actually lose a little bit of bandwidth, but actually you get a better feed that way. And this little device back here, the Mage will direct the Mini. In the last update, they just added Speedify to it, so I will be testing it on that more, but Speedify is fine. I haven't had too big of an issue, but I also wouldn't trust a big production I get paid for on it.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Starling Plaza, Texas asks, what's new in iOS 18 and when will we get it?
Nigel?
There are more things than we have time to cover, but I think the most exciting stuff is clearly the Apple Intelligent stuff. There's some UI stuff. There's some new stuff in messaging and notes. But it's really the combination of how they're bringing their intelligence together. As to when you're going to get it, well, it's whenever they announce the new iPhone, number 16, whenever that is. It'll be on or around that time period, which we're guessing is September or October.
Have you played with the any of the calculator stuff on the iPad yet?
Yes, I have, and it's terrific. It really works surprisingly well, and I actually found my ability to ask it questions failed me because it was much smarter than I was.
Yeah, I just think that it took them a long time to make a calculator, and then when you realize why it took so long, it's because that wasn't something they worked on in the last 6 months. That probably was a small team that spent 3 or 4 years on that product to get it to come out that way. It's just amazing. Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, in addition to obviously all the major AI stuff that they announced, the biggest fundamental UI change that they've done since the iPhone first launched is the ability that the fact that you don't have icons that are going to snap to a grid now. So now you can move app icons anywhere you want on that screen, which is something Android has had for years. And of course, the color customization. So major changes there. And of course, I think iOS updates, the major ones usually come out towards the end of September every single year.
Go ahead, Jason.
Nothing to add. Math Notes is amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. One of the other things, just using in general when you're using ChatGPT, and I haven't used Claude as much, but I use ChatGPT pretty heavily, is the ability to do math where you start taking lots of different data. Show me this and show me how it relates to this and show me what this looks like as far as like publicly available data. And even if it's not perfectly accurate, it gives you a sense of how to think about things. And I just find that to be a very fascinating thing as you start to, again, you can go back. A lot of times I look at that and I go, well, I'm going to go back and cross-check it. But it allows me to start thinking in large terms, and especially when I'm thinking about, projections or competitive analysis and so on and so forth. Jonas is going to be joining us to talk about WIP here in just a second. But just a quick reminder that we have the new panelist meeting tomorrow. So tomorrow at 9 a.m., we'll have the new panelist meeting. And if you're interested in joining this illustrious panel, we will explain how that works and how you can contribute to it. It's a really great opportunity. And we would love to have you if you're watching this. We'd love to have you on the panel. So join us at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You'll see that in the email that goes out. Also, of course, Saturday is a 1-hour Q&A, and Sunday is introspection, where we talk a little bit about, you answer your questions. If you're upset about something that we did, if you've got ideas for things that we should do, if you've got questions about why we're doing it, that's the time to ask is on Sunday. Sunday is a good day to do that, and you can find out more information in the email.